common sense. Your mayor, Joe Soucheray.
We're joined in the studio by Eric Rasmussen of the Channel 5 Eyewitness News investigative team. Eric's been around for 7, going on 8 years with KSTP. Where are you from, Eric?
I'm originally from the San Francisco Bay Area.
Did you do any investigative work for TV out there?
I sure did. KTVU.
The current investigative work that you guys have done has resulted in a special which will air tonight called What the Fraud?
WTF.
We're anticipating a 9 o'clock start for that because of an early start for the Monday Night Football game on ABC. Have you, in your years of doing investigative work, particularly noteworthy that you were in San Francisco, have you ever seen anything this bad?
Never.
I can't imagine that we would. And, we've been talking about it on this show for 5 years. We've been really following it closely and have become highly critical of Tim Walz's leadership. And I gather you're going to run through the gamut of the fraud, the food fraud, housing fraud, addiction, autism, housing stabilization. Am I correct?
You got it.
What are you going to find out what are we going to see that perhaps we don't know yet?
Well, I think you're going to get some more perspective at minimum here, Joe. I mean, my colleague Eric Chaloux just interviewed the new Inspector General for DHS. This guy started in March. And I just went back to review Eric's reporting. More than 1,000 or about 1,000 active investigations into care providers across programs.
Since March?
Well, currently. Today. And I think that's an important number because this is not a retrospective by itself. Let's go back and look at what happened. This is actively happening right now in Minnesota. The top prosecutors say it, the governor says it, and this new inspector general says it.
The governor's been useless in terms of enforcing any consequences, getting to the bottom of this. He's danced around it for years. I don't know what you guys found, guys and gals found, when you did interview Walz. Tom Hauser, I believe.
Tom Hauser has a brand new interview with Governor Walz. And, I've interviewed governors across many different states over many years. There's going to be some limitation in what you get, but Tom's not afraid to ask.
No, I'm looking forward to learning something because I'm unaware of anyone being held to consequence so far.
Accountability is a key part of this, right?
And there isn't any.
Well, and I think you're gonna Tom, ask point blank.
Okay.
The criticism that this has happened on your watch.
Right.
And I don't want to mischaracterize the governor's response, but he does respond to that. The other thing he says is the acknowledgement that there's more fraud, like we talked about, to be uncovered. This is not a, hey, we closed the gap in the dam and now we're okay.
Right.
He's not going to say that. And it stuck out to me that he even called this, I'm looking at my notes here, we have an organized crime ring in Minnesota, is how he's describing.
He being Walz?
Governor Walz, the extent of the fraud that's been going on for years and is still happening.
Well, I hope Tom said, okay, Governor, but that crime ring works for you.
Well, I'll let you weigh in on that, Joe.
What you're aware of a popular documentary that was aired, getting to be 2 weeks ago now, called Precarious State.
Yeah.
But this is distinct from that. This has nothing to do with. This is the state fraud problem, state government fraud
this
problem.
This is government assistance fraud. So I'm not going to speak to the other documentary, and that's fine.
Right.
I think it's important to make sure, and you want to consume a variety of media sources in this world we live in today. There's so many. You can go nuts. But not to toot our horn too much, but I think we hold ourselves to a very high standard. I know I do, and our team does in our investigative unit. And sometimes it can be frustrating for people because we can only report what we can prove. And tonight we're going to show you everything that we can prove and what we've learned directly from our sources that we've confirmed. And we ask the tough questions like we talked about.
Do you have a dollar amount yet that the taxpayers have been deprived of?
It's funny you asked that. Billions with an S.
No, and a B.
And a B. And this came up in my interview. I just did a fresh interview with U.S. Attorney, Prosecutor Joe Thompson. Until very recently, he was the acting U.S. Attorney.
Right.
But more importantly is he's on the ground floor of this because he's the lead prosecutor on the Feeding Our Future cases. And he made big news with my buddy Jay Coles this summer when he first invoked the $1 billion in fraud.
Right.
So I said, hey, you stand by that? Are you just throwing around numbers here? He said, oh, it's at least that. He said that is what they will eventually have ended up charging. We talk about reporting what you can prove. He thinks they'll get to the point where prosecutors can prove $1 billion in fraud. But if you just take a step back and we give him the license to do so, he says he thinks there is billions with an S.
Did your team discover fraud that has not been made public?
We get tips all the time. And I think a good example of that is some reporting that Eric Shalou did, one of our reporters, about the integrated community services. I mean, there's so many acronyms, you'll go dizzy if we try to sort them all out. But this is ICS. This was not on the radar.
Oh, I have not heard of it.
He hears from a guy who legitimately needs help. Smart guy, physically limited. There was a promise to assist him with it's a type of housing assistance in addition to other kinds of assistance. And his provider, some guy who's submitting invoices to the state, is not providing the help, he says.
Right.
And he files complaints. And Eric follows up. And that was not on the radar.
Right.
But I promise you, when they have the news conferences and they start throwing around all the acronyms, now that's one of the ones that's on the radar. DHS has taken steps to pause payments to some of those providers. So that's just an example I give you. There are others in the hopper, obviously, that I probably can't speak to. But we hear about it all the time from people. And certainly, we've got promos running for this special. That just, it's like, dropping an ember into some dry brush.
Go back to what you said. Walls is quoted, I'm paraphrasing, to the point where he said there's an organized crime ring. And he means within the government, apparently.
No, he doesn't.
He does not.
No. And look, he says accurately in this interview, there is not a government official, a bureaucrat, who's been charged in these cases. That is factual.
Right.
The people charged are wide-ranging, and I talk about the prosecutor, Joe Thompson. He used to be a gang prosecutor and drug trafficking prosecutor in Chicago. He says what we're seeing now is more akin to that than the individual fraudster. Because in the past, it used to be, when I worked in California, I worked in Boston, we'd find a guy ripping off food stamps, right? And he's posting on Facebook, I'll sell you my food stamps today. That's fraud.
Right.
They charge him, they arrest him, they put him away, and you're done. What Thompson and Walls is now acknowledging is it's not that simple. There is a vast network of people who are clearly, at least at minimum, comparing notes about how they do this kind of thing, and that's what we're up against.
I've always had a very basic question. I don't know if you guys got to the bottom of it or really had any need to, but when they were getting, when the Department of Education, for example, was getting their bills from so-called food providers, and those food providers were saying, yeah, we fed 7,000 kids last week. Wasn't there anybody there to say, wait a minute, you really fed 7,000 kids? Does that come up at all? How did that happen, that people were that stupid to believe that 7,000? I mean, that would have made your newscast every night. That would have been something that 4, 5, 11, and 9 would have said, holy cow, look at this line of kids going around the block to get fed. That never happened.
It didn't.
No.
And I've covered 2 Feeding Our Future trials, including the 6-week-long trial of Amy Bach and one of her lieutenants who ran the Safari restaurant, which, by the way, was a legitimate restaurant prior to the pandemic. And the FBI set up poll cameras to try to get video of these lines of people.
There aren't any.
Minivan here, minivan there. There's not. I think the answer may not be satisfying to you or to people who want to take a sledgehammer and say, oh, There's the bad actor, right?
Right.
It is in the record. It's in the court record. It's in the investigations. There were those at MDE who at some point, and prior to any investigating by the feds or anyone else, who said, no, this stuff doesn't add up. And to some extent, and I'm not giving MDE a pass here, to some extent tried to cut off some of the funding. Said, we're not going to pay these.
Then we got
and
a
then
lawsuit.
we got a lawsuit, right? And we have, I mean, Amy Bach showed up on the Channel 5 News in 2021 saying, we know they're discriminating. We know they're being unfair. We're suing them. And I won't get into the weeds on how that lawsuit played out, but there was some overture from the judge to MDE that you better be real sure. And so the timeline is MDE tries to stop some of this, Mamie Bach sues, and the faucet gets turned back on.
But the judge did not order MDE, the education department, to make payments. That's been a misconception.
You're
in this
right,
town.
and you heard the way I said it.
Yeah.
The timeline is the timeline, and again, I think there's a criticism pie to be handed out, and I don't mean to like soft pedal it, but there's plenty to go around, and MDE certainly shares part of that. But to answer your question, yeah, there was somebody saying this doesn't look right, but the question is, and the accountability for us is, okay, what did we do? And clearly, there is not a person, Republican, DFL, Independent, anywhere who says we did enough.
Right.
I haven't found that person.
Do you find this, in your experience? You're not a young guy. I mean, you're a young guy.
Whoa, shot
You're a
right
young
direct
guy.
to the heart.
I'm going to show myself out, gentlemen.
You're a young guy compared to me. What I'm meaning is you've been around doing this
I
for a
appreciate
while.
it. Yep.
All right?
Yep, fair.
Is this unique in the country?
I'll tell you, my skeptical reporter brain told me it's not. And when I
Really?
sat down with Joe Thompson, this is the prosecutor, federal prosecutor, I said, come on, Joe. I lived in California. I've lived on the East Coast, Florida. I've been everywhere. Is there a chance this is just going on everywhere, and you guys have really done a heck of a job unearthing it? And his answer was notable, and you can hear it tonight. He says, no. He says, we are unique. He says, yes, you can go find individual fraudulent actors in some of these government programs in other states. And, the bureaucracy that big states like California are. He says, but what they're finding is there are some programs, he says, he didn't specify, maybe I should have followed up. There are some aid programs in this state that he says, his words are, almost entirely full of fraud.
Do you get into ethnicity at all?
I talked to him about it.
I mean, this is pretty much Somali fraud.
I called it the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
And we're going to continue our reporting on it. I will tell you, and I don't know if it may be in the outtakes here, but I asked him about it. And obviously a huge number of the people charged, let's take Feeding Our Future, but you can take other programs, are from the Somali community, East African community, to be fair. And I asked him, why are we seeing that? And also fair to point out, the person at the very tippy top was a white lady from here in the burbs. He didn't have a direct answer, but he does talk about people being promised the American dream. Now, I don't get the sense that he's trying to shift blame away from these people who just clearly ripped off the system.
Oh, they think the American dream is to get rich as quickly as possible.
These bad actors, they'd have a hard time convincing anybody otherwise. That's exactly what it was. I mean, the text messages, my goodness, it gets lost in the, noise of everything. There were text messages where one guy's texting his other, hey, bro, we're going to be multimillionaires. I mean, it was just that blatant. Why it's happening in that community, I think there's more questions to be asked about that.
All right.
And I think
will you be asking those, do you think,
absolutely,
as time plays out here?
Yes. And I think but the other context to include, because there are many, immigrant communities here in the Twin Cities. Thompson points out also, even before their investigation of Feeding Our Future was made public, some of the people coming in the door to inform them, to help them, were also from the Somali community. So, as a reporter who has to stand by everything that comes out of my mouth with facts or documentation, I think that's important to point out too. But it is. I mean, you can't ignore it. And I think there are people even in the Somali community who would want some answers about that, because the people who are doing right are taking it on the head too.
Well, the Somali community is the one that tipped them off in the first place.
Right.
Yeah.
Has Joe Thompson moved on?
No, he's here.
Okay. Because we want to talk to him, and he's
now in charge of this, Joe. This is his only job.
Right. But there's a new
right,
federal
and that
attorney.
new guy has said, "This is your deal.
Right.
You pursue this."
Because we don't want to lose him.
No,
and he has a special characteristic in this. He's a native Minnesotan.
Yes, he is.
This is meaningful to him in that sense.
I talked to him about that, and he says he thinks that's part of what has made Minnesota susceptible, is the things that Minnesota offers, the mentality that we collectively as a state have had for so many years, certainly longer than I've been here, going way back, may have also been what made us so vulnerable. I think, what were his words? He doesn't want to call it naivete,
nicety.
maybe. Right. And he worries that played a role. I'm trying to find it. I'm such a nerd here, Joe. But he did talk about it, and he thinks that's part of. Oh, here it is. I don't know if it was arrogance. Naivete is maybe the word, that we were blind, or we wanted to put our heads in the sand, that things have changed in our state. Mm-hmm. And he's a heck of a messenger, because he knows what he's talking about.
Well, I'm going to really look forward to this.
Eric, earlier you mentioned that Governor Walz said that he does not think that any elected position has had a hand or a role in the fraud.
He said no one's been charged.
Well, sorry, no one's been charged. But let me ask you this. As someone that's skeptical by nature, meaning me, I find it entirely impossible that's the case. But you have Keith Ellison, Omar Fateh, and Ilhan, who all received campaign contributions from this very fraud-riddled system. How did they get this information, how to organize these fraud schemes to begin with?
Well, that might even have to be a different special.
Hey, we're not done.
No.
We're not even close.
I'm happy to help produce that if you want.
All right, well, you're welcome to come down to the investigative office.
I'm not raising my hand.
I have a face for radio and podcast.
Eric Rasmussen, it's called What the Fraud Tonight, Channel 5. It's a 5 Eyewitness News Special report. For my money, long overdue, and I'm happy that it's done. And I'll be watching it. And there's a fighting chance we get this on at 9 p.m. or so, because it's following Monday Night Football, but because there's 2 Monday Night Football games tonight. One starts at 6 p.m.
Correct.
And that is the one on Channel 5. That's somebody at Tampa Bay at Detroit.
Yes, sir.
And following that game, we have What the Fraud. I'm looking forward to it. Eric, thanks you very much.
Eric, it's funny that he called you old, but he's worried about his own bedtime and what time he's going to
say.
I didn't say old. I was trying to think of a way to say you're not a 21-year-old.
You got to work a lot harder than that to offend me, Joe.
Should have said seasoned. He's very seasoned.
No, I'm going to get to the bottom of this. None of that was meant as an offense. What I was saying is we're not dealing with a rookie reporter here.
I found it.
That's what I'm saying.
I thought rookie was a good term around here.
Oh.
Yeah.